Good. We will come to order at 3:59 PM. Let's introduce ourselves.
Scott Morley, Select Board.
Carrie Keeman, Select Board.
Dan Webster, Select Board.
Matt Maxwell, Town Administrator. We also have Matt Krajewski, Town Assessor, and Dave Barlow is on his way upstairs. Any changes to the agenda? Public comment? None.
No public.
Okay, let's get right to it then. Casella tax bills are really our only agenda item. Who would like to begin?
So what's wrong with them?
All right, so here's what's recently come before us as an issue. Recently, a few weeks ago, maybe, I know there was some conversation, some communications between our town attorney and Casella's attorney. And I don't know who else, but that conversation, that communication was essentially Casella's identifying what they think is an error on the town's part on their tax bill. As everybody knows, last year, the town settled litigation with Casella on its tax dispute, which had been going on for quite a while, and there was an agreement made, which isn't in front of me, but it's right there. So you have it right there. That agreement took a lot of time, took a lot of effort, has a number which essentially states the landfill is valued at $26 million for tax purposes. It says a lot more than that, but that's sort of the root of the issues. This year, the tax bill that was sent from the town to Casella's was not 26 million, but it was 28 million and change. They recognized that and they started their communication. That funneled over to me from Brian Monahan, who said, hey, got some issues, got some disagreements, what say you? So I had to take a step back, refresh myself with the agreement, asked the treasurer to help me think through these issues. David was very helpful. We looked at the last 3 years of taxes, tax bills. We talked about it a bit. I had more knowledge at that point, so I reached out to Matt Krajewski. I hope I said that right. Okay. And asked Matt's guidance and wisdom to help me think through the issues on what's in front of us, right, wrong, and indifferent. I, at that time, heard from John Casella, and John gave me his thoughts and opinions and wisdom on the matter, and I kept going around the circle because each time I did, I learned a little bit more. So I talked to Brian Monahan a few different times, Mr. Krajewski a few different times, John Casella a few different times, the treasurer a few different times, the town administrator a lot of times. And in a nutshell, this is the way I believe I've learned. And anybody who's listening can jump in and tell me I misspoke or I've said something that doesn't make sense to them. What happened essentially is there was an assessment done on the landfill a number of years ago now that was a lot more. Casella's went through the process, the legal process of challenging that. It went through boards here in town. There was a reduction in value. They continued, they sued the town. That suit was settled out of court. Well, it was signed by a judge, that right there. And there was an agreement made at the 26 million. there were a number of people involved in that direct negotiation. I was one of them. So I have that knowledge. Brian Monahan was one of them, so he has that knowledge. The pieces that seem to have missed in the dark a little bit is that it gets complicated. It gets a little bit complicated because the landfill parcel now has one parcel number, one tax ID. But there are a number of lister cards that develop that one parcel. For instance, they were separate parcels at one time, but as Casella has purchased them or expanded them or into them over the years, those got swallowed up by the grader. And so the original discussions and negotiations that were happening were what we thought and believed were not for all of those parcels, but for just the landfill parcel. And those others were an aside and had tax liabilities to them, but it rolls all together, so there's only one tax bill. Okay, if that makes any sense.
Yep.
So that's not now how Casella's team is viewing this. Their folks in their tax area and their attorneys are rereading, refreshing themselves with this agreement. And they're identifying parts of it, words in there that suggest that that's not the case, that it's the parcel ID is 26 million. I've asked David, the treasurer, to read it a bunch of times and tell me what his thoughts and opinions are, and all of these other people. And so that's the rub. To make matters worse, we're up against a tax deadline of, David,
November 7th at 5 p.m.
November 7th, so it's very fast approaching. Casellas at this point are saying they're not paying the $28 million assessed value, the tax for that. And they're gonna challenge that. And so that's the discussion, and we've had it round and round and round. Mr. Casella has gotten hold of me again and said they are willing to cut that price in half, the overage beyond the 26 million, so the 26 million to the 28 million and change, to cut that in half for the assessed value, making it a 27 million and change assessed value for the tax bill, all encompassing of that tax ID number. I have told him, well, that's an idea. And so that has to be your decision. That has to be the select board's decision to think about that, to see that, to understand all those moving parts and make a decision on that. Sorry about that. In discussion with those folks, I've also discussed if that's something that the town considered, then I believed there would need to be a couple of things that would have to happen. It would have to be some language to a new attachment, so this doesn't happen again, right? There has to be some of those conflicts that David has pointed out and others have pointed out that don't seem to be perfectly fit together, need to be very clearly identified. And also, even a little bit more than that, I've suggested that if we were to do this, that our attorney and our assessor would have to put their minds together like fast to put language to the document around what is this parcel ID and talk about those listers cards and put those things all together so that we don't have future conflict on this. And, John has offered, indemnification, which is also a part of the original document, which is a refresh of an indemnification for the town. So what makes it so pressing with time, and why I scheduled the meeting is because regardless of what we do, we can do nothing. We can say we're gonna keep the tax bill just as it is and let the challenges happen. We could take John's up on his offer and take that approach. But if that's an option on the table, which it is, I know that if you go with that option, you're up against a November 7th deadline. And there has to be work from the assessor's office on errors and omissions, work that he has to do, and creation formulation of these other documents, so we don't have this happen again. And then a new tax bill has to be created and sent. And all of those things are gonna chew up some days, and you would have to get moving on that tomorrow morning. Regardless of the decision, we have to make one.
No pressure.
Matt, have I said anything incorrectly, or would you like to take the opportunity to make clarity on anything I said?
I think you pretty much hit on it. I mean, I know this is a tough position for the town here because, yeah, I had just done a little bit of digging anyways, kind of going back, and I had originally emailed Brian for clarification on this back in February of 24. So my email's dated February 22nd, looking for some clarification on whether or not we add those contiguous values into the settlement amount, and his recommendation was yes, the intent was just the landfill was the portion to be reduced and that the contiguous parcels weren't going to be affected by this. I'm sure like you have seen from the agreement, I mean, there are a couple of areas that seem to kind of contradict themselves a little bit. Section 2 of the agreement there, when we talk about listed value of landfill premises, identified as 0TH 2021 span 10371. So it basically encompasses the entire parcel, and then just after that shall be 26 million for the 2024 tax year. But then if you move on to page 3, which is section 7 there, grand list appraisal value of other parcels. The appraised value of any other parcels owned by the taxpayer in the town of Coventry associated with a landfill are unaffected by this agreement. Taxpayers' obligations as to those properties are likewise unaffected. So a couple of sections that almost seem to kind of contradict one another. And I mean, I could see you going either way on this, certainly. I know Scott and I talked a little bit about, you know, what is the best outcome for the town. But I think you covered it basically well there, the gist of everything that's gone on.
So we say it's only the landfill, they say it's everything. Well, the landfill part that was affected. And what was the number that came up?
No. So, the intent of the town back then, and the thought of Brian and myself before a few days ago was that the landfill parcel, the original landfill parcel, not the contiguous houses, trailers, whatever
That
those
all
are.
under that span number.
That was the main conflict originally. That was a new assessed value that happened at the time from private assessor who the town hired, and came up to about a much higher valuation. That was the original grievance and all of the conflict that occurred. The town, I believe, believed that that was a separate issue and that those other parcels that are now comprising of the one parcel, which is why some of that language is in there, were not part of the $26 million package, that those were other values.
The houses and stuff.
Yeah,
So-
which is where the tax bill this year comes out at 28 million,
28.
which the town, which Matt was just talking about and talks about, that's the other amount. Casellas has looked at that, received that tax bill and said, and has said, whoa, we agreed at 26 million. And they've again gone back and reread that. Of course, there's, I think, some new players over there that weren't involved in the original negotiations, and so that's the sticking point. So so they're reaching out to us and they're saying, what is going on? We want to pay our tax bill, but we're not paying that because that's not what we agreed to pay. That's the rub. That started all of this flurry this week of,
Basically just two parties reading this differently.
I believe so.
Same as another document,
What's that?
same as another deed,
Yeah, that's right, similar.
similar.
Yeah, so, yeah, so after all of that, and all those basic conversations, the last number of days, John Casella, as I mentioned, has come forward and said to resolve the matter and not continue to go back to where we were before and litigate and deal with those issues. He's willing to split that increase in half for a new assessed tax value or whatever that comes out to be, and I think it's 27.
That seems like the easy way, but in the back, I remember doing this. That was like, I had, when I first came on,
Yep,
and I'm no, I don't know what things are worth, really, not in that scale, but it just seemed low.
well,
If you go up there and look at all that stuff.
that's not what we're doing tonight.
Yeah,
So what
yeah,
was-
I know, but I'm just thinking about the, yeah.
What's the number in there? All the pages aren't here. Do you have it in front of you?
Yeah, there, she's.
Is it
we're missing some
26
pages.
million even?
Yep.
Okay.
I think just,
No,
it's gonna get, I feel like that's a good way to handle it. Well, it is, otherwise we're
Well, a couple of things could happen. If we decide, if we opt not to do that, then the tax bill stands as issued at 28 million some. And Casellas have a decision to make, either pay it or don't pay it. And from what I'm hearing, and Brian heard, they're gonna challenge. And then there's some things that can get outside your control, and there's some things that'll get litigated, and we'll spend another $50,000.
to get it to be 28
Well, if you win.
if we win. I think 27's a happy medium.
Costs a lot of money to do these things, right? That was part of the whole conversation.
Yeah.
Last time, which is, geez, it's better to hire professionals, but then try to help navigate through all these issues. If you really bear down and really go into conflict mode, then it's pretty expensive.
Yeah.
And you're never guaranteed with what an outcome might be. There's no guarantees to that.
One thing I would just ask you to consider is if you are going to consider at least meeting in the middle of the 26 figure and where we're at now, just consider that the before the land use reduction, because there's actually a land use reduction of this parcel as well, the gross amount is 28,412,700. And I would think we would want to work off of meeting in the middle with that figure, because the land use reduction is still going to be applied. It's right now it's 189.7. So I
You
don't
see.
necessarily think we should work off of the net real value right now. We should work off of the gross just to kind of account for that land use reduction.
Which is this? Did he say this number?
Yeah, this is the 28 million, the 189.7 is the land use.
So Matt, you're talking about, you're talking about 28,412,700.
That's the number, if I were you, I would work from if you're considering meeting in the middle, just to, again, I don't think we want to take the net figure, the total taxable value, and kind of anticipating that 189.7 roughly is still going to come off the top.
Good point. Yep. Let's take this number right here and divide it into.
Divide it in two.
No, I'm sorry.
So I come up with a new tax bill, 464 million and 464,000 versus 483,000. Does that sound right?
No, we're in the millions here.
Yeah, but the tax bill is not millions. The tax
She
bill,
figured the tax bill.
I figured the bill
So
itself.
that's his job. So we just.
But I want to know what those numbers would be. Is what so if we split in the middle, so 26 million to 28 million for. Halfway between that is 27,206,350. Am I right? And then you take off 2 digits, times that by the tax rate.
So Carrie, what, you wanna know that, what the.
I want to know what the
The
actual.
difference, what they're gonna be paying in taxes.
Right, what would the tax bill be if we went from the middle of 26 to 28 or?
I get $462,444.26.
I was off by 2,000, so 462,000.
Again, I'd wanna run a tape on it so I can make sure I'm not.
Right,
Let me
but-
just run it again.
yeah. So if that's right, we're only talking haha, 21,000. And how many thousands of dollars did it cost the last time in litigation? And then would this be a one-time deal? And then next year we'd have to have something new in place for the deed. The amendments are,
Okay, so I can answer some of that. 206,663. Just see if I come out with your same number right here.
Yeah, I would take my number as a ballpark. It's just, you have to run the whole thing. And
right, but ballpark.
I can go downstairs to do it.
So our decision, we don't wanna get in those weeds, right? We wanna just talk about the assessed value. It's a good idea to get some ballpark idea about what that means for us. But the assessed value is the language we wanna stay in tonight, which comes out 27,206,350.
Mhm,
That's splitting that
mhm.
increase in half. Your question around sort of not getting into this mess again. Can't agree more on that one. The discussion would immediately go to a conversation that Brian and I have already had, which is, we played all the scenarios out. We tried to say, what happens if we say no? What can we anticipate? What do we gotta be ready for? How's that all gonna play out? We played out the scenario of what if this is the selection that you go and meet this in the middle, carry that through, what do you do? 2 things. We would suggest. One would be Brian and Matt immediately get together and craft language as an attachment to this that talks about that parcel ID and exactly what it's comprised of at this valuation. So that you're right, so it's the lister cards, I'm sure they're indexed, all of the things that Matt is a professional at doing. He gets folded into the mix with Brian for the legal part of it. They put their minds together and they create that attached document for us. And the indemnification piece, those things would go together. Casellas would need to accept and sign that before the next step would occur, which would be an errors and omission work that Matt would do for you, and then a new tax bill issued for them to pay before, well, I don't know if there's a 30-day to that based on, we don't need to know that this minute, but that would be the process of that. It wouldn't just be, you're right, us saying it today and then all of a sudden we have to revisit this. Or another select board in the future has to revisit this, we don't.
Yep.
David? Thoughts, opinions, comments?
Just a reminder that this is all education tax. So we're working for the state. Collecting tax for the state. If we have to defend it in court, the town pays for it. It benefits it benefits everybody in the state, but it's for state tax.
Right, it's not for municipal tax.
It's not a municipal.
Makes it easier.
So if we agreed to this number, it would be the same number going forward
Yes, until that, so if you,
until it was,
so if you agreed to the adjusted valuation of the 27 million, that is the number that parcel will be taxed at until there's a townwide reassessment,
Mhm,
like what occurred. Make this happen.
mhm.
Or there's any significant material changes in the property that would cause the town to identify that and seek reappraisal. Just like it is now in the,
Mhm.
so that wouldn't change.
Cause I weren't sure if it would be, if we said yes for this, then you've got a whole year to hammer out that. But you'd want all that done before.
It's already done. This doesn't go
Yeah,
away.
I know, but to decide, to clarify things.
Really, the only clarity, this is a pretty good document. The only clarity really is what that comprises that
Right,
parcel.
right.
It's not anything else there. That's a very good
Mhm.
court judge signed document. That really is good for all intents and purposes. It missed the mark in this issue. And so the attachment that would get signed as an attachment to this, as being the writing document, would have to occur. Before
Clarify that misunderstanding.
Right, to clarify that one misunderstanding. Yeah. Good question.
Thoughts, anybody? No, we're all looking at you, Matt. No, Dave?
Again, like I've told Scott many times, but I don't really have a dog in the fight.
Mhm.
Except that it's really pretty critical that they don't be delinquent,
Right,
at least on the amount that they're determined they're gonna pay.
right.
So.
Yeah.
Because we're gonna have to turn around and pay education taxes to the school very quickly,
Regardless,
regardless of what happens with this.
that's right.
If I gotta, if we have to go crank another $500,000-ish,
Mhm.
that's gonna be kind of brutal.
Yeah.
It's not that we can't do it, but it's just hard. Preferable not to.
We know, I mean, they came up with the split, but are they gonna sign the document? It's the kicker too.
Well, I've done a lot of work with John Cassell over the years, and if he says he's gonna do something, he does it.
Well, no, I'm just saying to clarify this, will he sign that? to say that's your new number going forward. It's not 26, it's
I think that was his proposal,
27.
right?
It's his proposal,
Yeah.
Mhm,
and there won't be a tax bill until that's done.
mhm.
You know, that has to happen. I was very clear about that. Brian's very clear about that. Matt's been very clear about that. I think. And so, you know, if that's our decision, then to effectuate that decision, those are the steps that will be followed. And we'll make that part of the motion. I think would be a wise thing to do too. I have to think through how to word that motion, but that would, you know.
Mhm.
Did we say that right, Matt?
I would say so. I mean, I'm prepared at this point. I mean, depending on your decision here this evening, it's like I'm planning to be in the office tomorrow. I can get to work on it, just speaking with Brian to see if we can begin to come up with something here. And I mean, I think it's a good idea that you have something signed in writing. But certainly it's going to take time to draft something, to get it signed, and then we can send out the revised tax bill along with the change of appraisal notice basically all at once here. So the time will be getting the thing drafted and signed, and then as soon as that happens, the turnaround for the rest of it will be pretty quick. If that's the decision of the board, certainly.
I guess I'm good with the proposal from Casella. Otherwise, it's a long. Doesn't seem worth it.
Mhm.
So, here's where I fall with it. Kind of obviously, but here's why I fall where I'm falling. I came on the select board this last time with this problem, and it was being litigated. The town was a defendant. I was very strongly opinionated on this is not how we do business. So what is happening? You gotta sit down at the table, you gotta figure this stuff out. You don't wanna let a judge or ask a judge to rule your life for you if you can navigate that for yourself. And so we reapproached Casellas, we sat down again, we navigated the issues, we came up with this. Very expensive. Very expensive for the town. I think if we were to go back and look at what this issue has cost the town of Coventry, we're well into the $100+ thousands of dollars now, when you all told. With attorney's fees and all of the like the last number of years, it's cost us an awfully lot of money. You will revisit that expenditure if there's a challenge to this, and I don't say that we should ever shy away from doing what's right. That's not how I think. I also am a firm believer in that I, as a select board member, work for the town of Coventry. What is the best for the town of Coventry? Not what is best for a person, what is best for a company, what is best for the town of Coventry. There's a lot of things to consider with this type of a decision. I've spent a few sleepless nights this week. I talked with everybody that's a major player. Thank you, Brian. Thank you, Matt. Thank you, David. Thank you, John. Thank you, Matt downstairs, and everybody else that I've talked to. I wish I could turn back the clock and not have this happen and have it had ensured that we got better language in a couple of these paragraphs. We didn't. It's what it is. You can't change it past, but we can change it going forward. Here's our opportunity to change it for the betterment of our town, fix it so it doesn't reoccur, maintain good relationships. I believe the best of all worlds. So I'm for that agreement, the way we've talked about it. if it doesn't work the way that we've talked about it, like you're kind of alluding to, and you're right. If we propose to accept the proposal for that new number, then it will and only will be as long as Matt and our attorney correct the language going forward, and there's a new indemnification piece, and they're signed by Excel prior to any tax bill going out. That's the way it's gotta be. It's business, right? We have to do that. Because that's what's right for the town. Otherwise, we see what happens through the expensive road,
And I'm assuming that they're thinking the same thing.
I suspect.
Now,
So
let me
John's
just-
proposal was, I'm sorry, John's proposal was the money. My proposal is these other
Okay.
pieces to this,
So their part wasn't
which
that.
protects the town for future issues, and John's response was, that's fine.
Okay,
So go ahead and draft that up, send it over to me, I'll get it done. And then we'll get the tax bill and get your taxes paid. Okay,
So he knows it's a possibility.
he knows it's a fact.
Okay.
If.
Well, if we agreed tonight,
Yeah.
then he
If-
knows that, okay.
He knows that my discussion and my recommendation to you guys is that I would not accept that number without those in as an attachment. He knows that's what I think, and he knows that's what I was gonna say, and I would say, do not vote for that. I would say I'm voting no. But with his assurance that that is an appropriate situation, and he will accept that and sign off on those things, then I would take that next step to see that through.
I didn't
is
realize
where I
that you
would
had
be.
already discussed that with him, so
Yeah,
that was my question. If we do all this, then he doesn't sign it, then what?
then, and that still could happen, right? Life happens, and so if we, when we make our motion,
Mhm,
I think that it's very important that the motion include that
mhm.
language, that's part of our decision making. And anything less than that stalls the deal,
Mhm.
is the way I would characterize that. So the motion is sort of like in three steps there, right? It's not just about a number, it's about accepting. It would be about accepting the offer for the number for the assessed value, and it's also to add language to the existing stipulation, which does two different things, and I can help word that as our motion. Failing one of those fails
The motion.
the motion, is what I would do. Matt, I'm sorry I cut you off.
No, you're fine. And I don't mean to inject one more thing. I just am having an idea here as you're discussing this it sounded like from hearing David Barlow speak before, the concern is certainly we don't want this to go delinquent, and we're worried about the turnaround time from the sense of getting the amendment written and signed, okay, prior to us sending a revised tax bill and a change of appraisal notice out. Just one thing to consider, you certainly want an amendment to that agreement, okay, that spells all of this out. But is it not worth considering that if you vote on a figure tonight that you're comfortable with moving forward with, I still issue a change of appraisal notice allowing them to appeal that to me along with a revised bill at the number of your choosing here tonight, if that's where you want to go. And then at least that gives you some additional time to then we work out an amendment and we get it signed. But for the sake of getting the tax bill potentially paid on time or sooner, that we go about it doing it that way. I mean, that's just, it's one more thing to consider if the concern is we have to make an education payment to the state here soon. And that's obviously a relatively large bill that we await in this town. So if they are allowed to certainly appeal the decision of yours to me, okay, through that change of appraisal notice, they're going to have that 2-week window to do so, but we could potentially have some additional time after that to get the amendment drafted and signed. Do you follow me?
I do. This is David. Yeah, basically send them the revised bill, create the revised bill right now. Send it to them. Get them to, so they can pay it pending, whatever they decide they're gonna do. Presumably just sign the new document. They do get an appeal
Yeah,
process, the same as anytime there's a change. But we get them the new bill, so they can pay it. And then if there's further down the road, it doesn't come together, at least they're not delinquent. And they're,
so would that be wording the motion? Is it like just for this
I think I can
year?
remember
Is
that.
that rather than doing all of that, just 1 year? Just for this tax bill,
Just for
that's
this
it?
tax year,
And then move with the document?
could be a separate motion, I think. Just a motion that says, create the revised tax bill now for tax year 24. And then separate, whatever it is you're gonna.
Yeah.
Relate. That way there's no, there's not a 2-week delay or more waiting for them to sign whatever. Because we've already presented them with a bill anyway. They could go ahead and pay that and work this out and we send them a refund too. I mean, but I think they're gonna be happier with a revised bill on the table that says, here you go. But we need to cross the Ts, dot the Is as well as a separate process. Or, I mean, it's part of the same process, but it's
Yeah.
Giving a maximum time to pay.
So I'm hearing what you guys are laying down. And I don't know that I would say that I'm skeptical in any way of John holding up his bargain. But it doesn't seem to be the best business when we could mandatory the signature before the new tax. Sort of gives you some leverage. If there's not gonna be a signature on that, and I'm talking about if you have that out in the next day or two, it will be signed the day he receives it. Is my understanding. I don't think I'm gonna have to play with that. And if we do, then the bill is 28 million. He's got a tax bill already.
Right.
So his request is to reduce his tax bill.
The difference is $20,000, 646.68. It's actually not a big,
Tax.
it's not a huge difference. It is some.
So Matt, if I'm gonna speak for Brian because he's not here, I like to wait till he watches this. I've talked enough with Brian about this now to know that he's dropping whatever he's got to do to make this happen. And so we're not gonna be waiting on Brian. So if you're here in this building tomorrow and Brian is alive, then I don't see any reason this isn't done. I think Brian is already got the frame in his head. You know, cause we played all these options out and talked all through, you know, what if. He already knows, he's already got the draft in his head, if not already on paper, no, Brian. So I don't see the town delaying that. And if you're fast and capable to be free enough to do it, then, you know, I can't see why this isn't done this work week.
No, I definitely think it can be then. I wasn't aware that Brian was dropping everything to do this. So that was certainly part of my thought there when I had just pitched that scenario there, that in the event that he's got other client business to do, if he's able to answer the phone at, let's say, 8:30, 9 o'clock tomorrow morning, I'll be ready to go with him.
That's kind of how we left it. And so he knows, I mean, he knows the importance of this. So that's where we were at, last night. So I'm kind of with you on this. I don't like seeing a new tax bill go out without that signature. Just seems like then you're hoping and you're relying on that good relationship to happen, but it doesn't seem like it's the best course of business. Even though I don't have much doubt that it wouldn't happen, it just doesn't seem like clean business, right? If it can be done, and I think it can be done, I think it just takes people putting that as the priority, and I believe Brian will do that.
And where's the person that's gonna sign this agreement?
Meaning
The Casellas.
Joe Casella.
So it'd be like, does it have to go snail mail, or can you
No.
send electronically and he signs and scans and sends back, or?
Yeah, you can see a signature on the last page.
Yeah, they do it through DocuSign.
Signature on the last page of what?
Yeah, not the tax bill, but the agreement itself. It's all the way to the last, on the last page.
Oh, that's right, I was looking in the other one that didn't have all that. Yep, right there.
It happens, zippy-doo.
Looks like a rubber stamp, it's exactly the same.
So, good conversation, Matt. I think, in this case, I'd like to stay firm. And I'd like to stay putting pressure on you. You and Brian, to make it happen, get it done, and then, I mean, it's only the 23rd.
Yeah.
So we're 2 weeks.
Don't get me wrong from what I pitched to you too. The only reason that I pitched that is without knowing that Brian's availability certainly, and then just considering from a treasurer's standpoint in terms of if he has to make a payment by a certain date, I just want to make sure we're not causing any strain on that process. I am fully prepared to get this done as quick as possible. So that's not the issue at all. It's if Brian's available, I think we can hash this out too.
Okay. The errors and omission work. Does the date of that work change the due date of a tax bill?
I believe, and David Barlow can comment on this certainly, but because it's a real value change, is what we're going to process here through an errors and omissions. I believe he has to give them 30 days ultimately to pay that revised bill, but the revised bill can go out at the same time as the change of appraisal notice as a result of the errors and omissions.
Yeah, I have to read the statute on that, though. It might only be the difference, right? So since they've had a legitimate tax bill for months now, I want to read the statute.
Yeah, okay, yeah. So it's something that you can figure out. I mean, if it did, it would allow for a little bit more time there on his end, but we'll see what we do here, and then, you know, phones fix a lot of that stuff.
So put your thinking cap on, come up with a motion.
Emotion.
Mhm.
So you're there, you're at the meeting point of the 27,206,350 for assessed value, you're there. And you're there for the amendment.
Mhm.
With language that more details and describes what the parcel is comprised of.
Yep.
And you're there for a refreshed indemnification for the town of Coventry. So that would be the motion, those two items would, boy. I thought I had that off, I'm sorry. I don't know how to shut it off, apparently.
explain indemnification, because you're making it sound like,
Thank you, Carrie.
yeah,
What's that?
I thanked her for asking the question.
Oh, indemnification is essentially if, it's the same thing, it's in the original agreement, we would just want refreshed language on it. Because there's an amendment that, if the state were to challenge this decision and come up with values on their own that are larger than ours, then there's some presumed liability that the town of Coventry would owe that amount of money in taxes beyond what we had assessed
Okay,
and received money, tax money for on behalf of the state. The indemnification process is Casella saying, if that were to happen, our indemnification is we will pay that. We will own the responsibility of that financially.
okay, I remember doing that now. Yeah.
And that's always been a very strong, clear.
Yeah.
Process throughout this. And again, my discussions have been clear on that too, which is, I know it's in there, but it's a refreshed language because you've got a new number now with an amendment. And everybody's agreed on that.
Yeah.
mhm.
That's very good for you, important. At least that's my understanding. Did I say that right, Matt?
I think you got it there. I was reading through some of the indemnification pieces, and yeah, most of it has to do with financial liabilities and hold harmless in this case anyway. So I think you summed it up pretty well.
Okay. All right, well. Agreed.
Mhm.
Just thinking about,
Yep.
we miss some things in here. Maybe Brian, maybe is there anything else that we could miss? A miscommunication type of thing in there that maybe Ryan could just double check for that stuff? Or is there some, you know what I mean?
Well. That would begin a lot of new conversations. I don't believe there is that. Survived the scrutiny of a judge and all the parties at the time. It's mostly in the favor of us. It may, attempting or trying to look at something like that certainly would stall the process and certainly then poses some risk at
Yeah.
Casella saying, this isn't what we're signing on to. I
Yeah.
don't know
Yeah.
all that, but you know, this is real legal stuff. This is kind of the big leagues talking about those sorts of documents. You don't
We don't want to change
want to go into that a whole lot. I wouldn't think, even though it's not a court's order, it is blessed by the court as it is. So the clarity that we're seeking is and the only thing that anybody's come up with so far, is, you know, this particular challenge, and there's some language in there, and David's got it highlighted for us. It's one of the first things he caught, I think, when he was looking at it. So you know, all the other stuff, I don't see, it's a good question. I just don't know that it's the right moment for it. It doesn't mean that maybe in the next year or two, if we want to do that and ask Brian and start a potentially new conversation about this or that, certainly we can always go back and try to do those things. But I think for the moment that we're in,
Yeah.
it would be potentially not helpful. But I don't know that.
You just you wonder how these things get missed. It's,
Well. Yeah.
I'll say this in terms of just, to me, the way that contiguous parcels are done in Vermont, I mean, me as an assessor and appraiser, I have my own opinions on contiguous parcels, so I can see where that, may have been overlooked, because ultimately the intent was the landfill. And when we talk about contiguous parcels for tax purposes, in a lot of other environments, states, I mean, we may break out the individual assessments for all of those homes that are technically contiguous. So I think that just to, going through this agreement, I think it's a strong agreement. I think what just needs to happen though is the parcel itself needs to be defined a little bit more clearly, just in terms of this either does or doesn't include those contiguous parcels, as the state of Vermont uses that term.
I agree, Matt, I think you're spot on that. It's, that's it. You nailed it. That's really the crux of it. Yeah.
And we are going to include them. Is that what I'm getting?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well,
For
there needs to
27.
be that description. That's
They are all included.
What is, identified as OTH, O2, O21, what is it?
Yeah.
And that's gonna be Matt's job and Brian to come put their minds together to create that attached document that says, this parcel is valued at this amount of money, and this is what it is.
Yeah.
And that will clear that up for any viewer in the future. Is that right?
I would agree with that. The biggest thing of the amendment is just going to really show here is just defining what the entire parcel is, ultimately, the entire parcel account, if you will. And then in total, the summation of everything, what that agreement needs to be. So again, if it's the 27,206,350 figure that I've heard here, it needs to be clear that that's the entire contiguous parcel and not just the landfill portion, as an example.
Yes. Yep,
Mhm.
make sure you write this right.
What am I doing? I'm just
Uh,
operating the computer,
That's it?
but
Okay,
I can certainly work with that.
well,
Both Matts.
he can watch it. All right. I'm gonna keep going around the table till everybody has no more questions.
Okay.
It's an important one.
Mhm.
I want everybody to really be comfortable and clear, and got opinion, say it. Questions, ask them.
No, I'm good.
Okay. Matt, good?
I think I'm good. I think you guys, it's just my opinion, but I think you're making the right decision here. I don't think the community stands to necessarily benefit from going through any more litigation processes. So I think you're, in terms of making that decision, that's my opinion.
Thank you. David, thoughts, opinions, town treasurer?
Just actually a question here and comment to you tomorrow. Is that what I thought?
Yes.
I am going to be there tomorrow. Yep.
Okay, good. I'll see you.
Sounds good. I'll be there. I'm planning to be there from 8:30 to 12:30 tomorrow.
Okay,
And I'll leave you alone. We'll work on November.
Sounds good. I'll shoot you a follow-up email.
Okay.
Okay, well, if there's no objections or any other questions, I think we're all in agreement. I'll try to word, this. I will make a motion. The town accept John Casella's offer to adjust the assessed value on the landfill parcel and all of the parcel in which it comprises in the settlement agreement to reflect a new value of $27,206,350. I further motion that settlement or that new appraised value will be contingent upon two items. One, a refreshed lost the word,
Indemnity or
indemnification from Casella to the town of Coventry for this, for the action, which will be in writing. And I further motion it will be contingent upon a new amended settlement agreement for the, attached to this, which will be very descriptive on what comprises the landfill parcel, all of the lister cards, the entire parcel and its detail. The attorney and the town assessor will create those documents. Those documents will be forwarded and will need to be signed by Casellas prior to the new tax bill assessed value of $27,206,350.
second. Oh. Somebody seconded it.
All in favor?
Favor?
Aye.
Okay,
Job, Scott?
thank you all. Motion to
Adjourn.
adjourn.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.